The great station floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a dead star that had not burned for 1,000,000 years. This was the heart of the Galactic Unified Council, a place where 47 alien species came together to rule the galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Council had decided which worlds would live and which would die. They had crushed rebellions, ended civilizations, and shaped the stars according to their will. Today they gathered to discuss a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, a planet called Earth. High Commander Torek stood at the center of the great chamber. His scales glowed with soft blue light, a sign of pride among his people, the Villani. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, with 4 arms and eyes that saw on spectrums no human could imagine. Behind him floated a holographic image of Earth, spinning slowly in the darkness. "This world has refused our demands," Torek announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, reaching the ears of thousands of representatives. "They have rejected membership in the Council. They have closed their borders to our traders. They have ignored our warnings." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The Sonari delegates clicked their mandibles in disapproval. The Torak representatives growled low in their throats. No species had defied the Council in 3,000 years. "I propose the Declaration of Subjugation," Torak continued. "We will give the humans 7 solar cycles to surrender. If they refuse, we will destroy them completely." The vote was unanimous. 47 species raised their voices in agreement. The message was prepared and sent across the void of space, traveling at speeds that bent the laws of physics. It would reach Earth in less than 1 hour. On the bridge of the Earth's defense fleet ship called the Soul's Dream, Captain Ginho Park was drinking coffee when the transmission arrived. He was a man of average height, with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had served in the fleet for 20 years, and he had seen many things. But he had never seen anything like this. "Captain," said Lieutenant Unibeak from her station, "we are receiving a message on all frequencies. It appears to be from the Galactic Council." Ginho set down his coffee cup. "Put it on screen." The image of High Commander Torek appeared before them. The alien spoke in his own language, but the ship's computer translated his words into Korean. Ginho listened carefully as Torek explained the terms of surrender. Complete submission. Total control of Earth's resources. The end of human independence. "We have 7 days to respond," Yuna said quietly. "If we refuse, they say they will send 900,000 warships to destroy us." Silence filled the bridge. Ginho looked at his crew. He saw fear in some faces, confusion in others. But then he noticed something strange. Minho Kung, the weapons officer, was smiling. "Sir," Minho said, "did they really say 900,000? Jinho nodded slowly. "That is what they said." Minho started to laugh. It was not a nervous laugh or a scared laugh. It was the genuine laughter of someone who had just heard the funniest joke in the universe. Yuna looked at him with wide eyes, but then she understood. She started laughing too. Within moments, the entire bridge crew was laughing. The sound echoed through the corridors of the Soul's Dream, spreading to other sections of the ship. Crew members who had just heard the terrible news were now doubled over with tears in their eyes. A young ensign named Jie Moon approached the captain with confusion on her face. "Sir, I do not understand. Why is everyone laughing? The Council has just declared war on us. They have almost 1,000,000 ships." Ginho wiped his eyes and tried to control his breathing. "Ensign, do you know why humanity never announced our full military strength to the galaxy?" Jie shook her head. "Because we did not want to scare anyone," Jinho said. "The Council thinks they are dealing with one planet. One small world with primitive technology and limited resources." He pressed a button on his console, and a star map appeared in the air before them. Red dots began to appear across the galaxy. First, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. "Those are our colony worlds," Ginho explained. 17 planets that we settled in secret over the last century. Each one has its own fleet, its own army, its own shipyards. More dots appeared. Blue ones this time, scattered throughout the darkness. "Those are our deep space stations. Mining facilities. Research bases. Military outposts." Jihad's mouth fell open. The map was covered in lights now, spreading across regions of space that the Council believed were empty. "The Council has 900,000 ships," Jinho said. "We have 4 million. The laughter on the bridge slowly died down as the reality of the situation became clear. This was not a war that humanity would struggle to survive. This was a war that humanity had been preparing for since the first day. They reached the stars. Yuna turned to the captain with a question in her eyes. "What should our response be, sir?" Jinho thought about it for a long moment. He thought about the arrogance of the Council, the thousands of species they had conquered, the civilizations they had destroyed. He thought about the message they had sent, full of threats and demands. Then he smiled. "Send them one word," he said. "No." The message traveled back across the void of space. It reached the Council station in less than an hour. When High Commander Torek read it, his scales flickered with confusion. One word. Just one word in response to the might of the entire galaxy. "They are insane," said Ambassador Veleth of the Sonari. "They must know they cannot win." "Perhaps they hope for mercy," suggested another representative. "Perhaps they believe we will show them kindness if they appear brave." Torek shook his head. "It does not matter what they believe. In 7 days, we will teach them the truth. We will show them what happens to those who defy the Council." He turned to his admirals and gave the order. "Begin mobilizing the fleet. We leave for Earth in 3 days." Across the galaxy, 900,000 warships began to move. Crews were assembled. Weapons were loaded. The greatest armada in galactic history prepared to crush a small blue planet that had dared to say, none of them knew what was waiting for them. On Earth, in a room deep beneath the mountains of Korea, General Do-won Lee watched the Council's fleet movements on a massive screen. He was an old man with a scarred face and hands that had seen many battles. Beside him stood Admiral Sahi Yoon, commander of the First Response Fleet. "They are coming," Sahi said softly. Do-won nodded. "Good. We have been waiting for this for 200 years. He pressed a button on his console and spoke into the communicator. "All fleets, all stations, all colonies. This is General Lee. Begin Operation Silent Thunder. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity really is." Across 17 worlds and 4,000 stations, billions of humans received the message. Soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots climbed into their ships. Engineers powered up systems that had been sleeping for decades. The galaxy had declared war on Earth, and Earth was ready. The Vellani Advanced Fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system. 50,000 warships, each one larger than a city, hung in the darkness of space like metal mountains. Their commanders looked at their screens and saw nothing. No defense stations. No patrol ships. No sign that anyone was protecting this system at all. Braxis, the second in command of the Vellani fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Victory. He was smaller than Torek, but twice as cruel. His scales were dark red, the color of dried blood, and his 4 eyes scanned the empty space before him. "Where are they?" asked one of his officers. "Our scouts reported that the humans had ships." Braxis clicked his teeth in amusement. "They have run away. They heard we were coming, and they fled like animals before a fire." He turned to his navigation officer and gave an order. "Move the fleet toward the 3rd planet. We will take their homeworld and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us." The 50,000 ships began to move forward. They passed the outer planets first. Giant balls of gas and ice that spun slowly in the darkness. Then they passed the asteroid belt, a ring of rocks that circled the yellow sun. Still nothing. The officers on the Vellani ships began to relax. Some of them laughed at the stories they had heard about humans. Fierce warriors, the reports had said. Dangerous predators from a death world. But where were these mighty warriors now? Hiding in caves on their planet, no doubt, praying for mercy that would never come. Lieutenant Commander Taiho Shin sat in a small station, hidden inside an asteroid. He was a young man with steady hands and calm eyes. Around him, 50 other officers monitored their screens in silence. They had been waiting here for 3 days, living on recycled air and cold food, watching the Vellani fleet approach. "They are in position," said one of his officers quietly. Taiho nodded. He looked at the screen one more time, checking the calculations that he had checked 100 times before. The Volani ships were exactly where they needed to be. They had flown straight into the trap without even knowing it existed. He pressed a button on his console and spoke one word. Now, across the Sol system, hidden stations came alive. They were buried inside asteroids and moons, invisible to any scanner, powered down and silent for years. Now they activated together, and gravity itself became a weapon. The Volani officers did not understand what was happening at first. Their ships began to shake. Warning lights flashed on every console. Navigation systems went crazy, showing impossible readings. "What is this?" Braxis shouted. "What is happening?" His science officer looked at his screen with wide eyes. "Commander, there are gravity wells activating all around us. Dozens of them. They are pulling our ships in different directions." The artificial gravity fields tore through the Volani formation. Ships that had been flying in perfect lines now spun wildly out of control. They crashed into each other, metal screaming against metal. Warp drives overloaded and exploded. Communications jammed completely in the chaos. No one noticed the human fleet rising from beneath the orbital plane of the system. Admiral Sahi-Yun stood on the bridge of the Busan Rising, watching the destruction with cold satisfaction. She was a woman in her 50s with white hair and a face that showed no emotion. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. "All ships," she said calmly, "begin attack pattern thunder." 3,000 human warships moved as one. They were smaller than the Volani vessels, but faster and more agile. Their weapons were different too. While the Volani used plasma cannons that needed time to charge, human ships carried railguns that fired solid metal at speeds close to light itself. The first wave of fire hit the Volani fleet like a hammer. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of white and orange. Metal fragments flew through space, destroying more ships as they went. The Volani tried to return fire, but their weapons could not track targets that moved so quickly. Captain Jano Park led his squadron through the heart of the battle. The Sol's Dream weaved between enemy ships, firing constantly, never staying in one place for more than a second. His pilots had trained for years in simulations of this exact scenario. Every move was perfect. Every shot found its target. Captain Yuna called out from her station. "Enemy command ship is trying to retreat." Ginho looked at his screen and saw the Eternal Victory turning away from the battle. Its engines flared as it tried to escape the gravity wells that still pulled at it. "No," Ginho said simply. "They came to our home. They do not get to leave." He pushed his ship forward, flying straight toward the massive Volani flagship. Weapons fire lit up the darkness around him, but nothing touched the Sol's Dream. Ginho had flown through worse than this in training on the Eternal Victory. Braxis watched the human ship approach with growing terror. He had never seen anything move like that. It twisted through space like a living creature, avoiding every shot, getting closer and closer. "Shoot it down," he screamed. "Destroy it." But it was too late. Jinho locked onto the flagship's engines and fired. 3 railgun rounds tore through the Volani ship, ripping apart the systems that powered its warp drive. The Eternal Victory was now trapped in the Sol system with no way to escape. The battle lasted 14 minutes when it was over. 35,000 Volani ships had been destroyed. Another 10,000 were damaged beyond repair. Only 5,000 managed to escape, limping back to Ward Council space with their drives barely working. Braxis stood in chains on the bridge of his ruined flagship, surrounded by human marines. Sahi-Yun walked toward him slowly, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She looked up at the alien commander who towered over her and smiled. "You should have done more research before you came here," she said. "We are not like the other species you have conquered. We did not evolve in peace. We did not develop in safety. We come from a world where everything wants to kill everything else." She leaned closer. "We are predators, Commander, and you've walked into our territory." Surviving Volani ships carried a message back to the Council. It was simple and short. "We gave you a chance to leave. There will not be a second one. When High Commander Torek received the news, his scales turned completely white. He had lost 35,000 ships in less than 15 minutes. The humans had not lost a single vessel. Not one. "This is impossible," he whispered. "This cannot be real." But it was real. And deep in his heart, Torek began to understand. Something that filled him with a fear he had never known before. The Council had not declared war on a primitive species. They had woken up something far worse in the command center beneath the Korean mountains. General Doan Lee received the battle reports with a satisfied nod. Sahi appeared on his screen, her face calm and professional. "First phase complete," she reported. "Enemy advance fleet destroyed. Our forces suffered no casualties." "Good," Doan said. "But this was only the beginning. They will send more ships." "Many more," Sahi nodded. "We will be ready." The general ended the call and turned to the massive star map on his wall. The real battle had not even started yet. The Council still had hundreds of thousands of ships. They still believed they could win through sheer numbers. They were wrong, but they would have to learn that lesson the hard way. The Council met an emergency session for the first time in 300 years. Representatives from all 47 species filled the Great Chamber, their voices rising in anger and fear. The holographic images of destroyed ships floated in the air above them, a reminder of their humiliation. High Commander Torek stood before them with his scales still pale. He had not slept since receiving the news of the defeat. His officers had failed him. His intelligence had failed him. Everything he thought he knew about humans had been wrong. "How did this happen?" demanded Ambassador Veleth of the Senari. His mandibles clicked with fury. "You told us the humans were primitive. You told us they had only basic technology." "Our intelligence was wrong," Torek admitted. His voice was heavy with shame. "The humans hid their true capabilities. They deceived us completely." The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Species that had been allies for centuries now turned on each other, blaming one another for the disaster. The Torak accused the Villani of arrogance. The Senari accused everyone of incompetence. But while the Council argued, something far more dangerous was happening across the galaxy. Intelligence. Officer Ji Wuhan sat in a small cafe on the Senari homeworld, drinking a hot beverage that tasted like honey and flowers. She looked like an ordinary traveler, a human tourist exploring the galaxy. No one suspected that she was one of Earth's most skilled operatives. Across the table from her sat a young Senari named Crix. He was a worker from the northern factories, one of millions who labored every day to build ships and weapons for the Council. "The medicine worked," Crix said quietly. His compound eyes looked around nervously. "My daughter is cured. The doctors said it was impossible, but the human treatment saved her life." Giwu smiled warmly. "I am glad. No child should die from a disease that can be cured." The withering plague had killed millions of Senari for centuries. The Council had promised to find a cure, but never did. Then human doctors arrived with simple treatments that worked perfectly. Within weeks, hospitals across the Senari homeworld were empty. "The Council lied to us," Crix said. His voice was harder now, angry. "They could have saved our children any time they wanted. They let them die to keep us working. To keep us afraid." Giwu nodded but said nothing. She did not need to say anything. The truth was doing all the work for her. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On the Torak mining colonies, human engineers taught workers how to organize and demand better conditions. On space stations near the border, human traders shared news and information that the Council tried to hide. On a dozen different worlds, human teachers opened schools where anyone could learn for free. The humans were not just fighting a war with weapons. They were fighting a war with ideas. Back on Earth, General Doan Lee reviewed the intelligence reports with satisfaction. The Council was falling apart from the inside. Species that had been loyal for thousands of years were now asking dangerous questions. Workers were refusing to build weapons. Soldiers were questioning their orders. "Phase 2 is proceeding well," said Admiral Hyun Wabik. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a deep voice. He commanded the Deep Space Expeditionary Fleet, the largest of Earth's hidden forces. The Council will send their Grand Armada soon, Doan replied. They have no choice. If they do not respond with overwhelming force, they will lose control completely. He pulled up a star map showing the positions of all human forces. Red dots for the Sol System defenders. Blue dots for the colony fleets. Green dots for the deep space forces. How many ships will they send? Asked Admiral Yunbi Cho. She was the commander of the Outer Colony's combined forces. Brilliant strategist who had never lost a battle. Our estimates say 400,000, Doan said. Maybe more. They will gather everything they have for one massive attack. Yunbi studied the map with careful eyes. And we have 4.2 million combat-ready vessels, plus another 800,000 in reserve? The room was silent for a moment as the numbers sank in. The Council believed they were sending an unstoppable armada. They had no idea they were walking into the jaws of a monster. There is something else. Jiwoo's voice came through the communication system. She was still on the Senary homeworld, sending encrypted messages through hidden channels. The Council is not united. At least 15 species are considering rebellion. They are only waiting for the right moment. Doan leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a small smile. Then we will give them that moment. The plan was simple, but brilliant. When the Council's armada arrived, they would not find one human fleet waiting for them. They would find 3. One defending Sol, one attacking from the side, and one cutting off their retreat. But the military victory was only part of the strategy. The real goal was to break the Council completely, to show the entire galaxy that the old order was finished. On the colony world of New Busan, millions of soldiers trained for the coming battle. They ran through simulations, practiced boarding actions, and learned how to fight in the zero gravity of space. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the children of a species that had spent its entire history at war with itself. Captain Sun Wukong walked through the training grounds. Watching the young fighters practice, he was a quiet man with sad eyes, commander of the stealth ship Silent Hope, while others would fight the battle with guns and missiles. Sun Wu had a different mission. He would strike at the heart of the Council itself. Everything is ready, his second officer reported. The ship is invisible to every scanner in the galaxy. We can reach the Council station without anyone knowing. Sun Wu nodded slowly. Good. When the battle begins, we move. Across the galaxy, the Council continued to gather its forces. 400,000 ships assembled at staging points, loading weapons and supplies. High Commander Torek gave speeches about victory and glory, trying to rebuild the confidence that had been shattered. The humans surprised us once, he declared. They will not surprise us again. When our full power descends upon their world, they will kneel before us or die. His words were broadcast to every corner of the Council's territory, but not everyone believed them anymore. In factories and mines, in barracks and homes, billions of beings watched the broadcasts and wondered if perhaps the Council was wrong. Perhaps. The humans were not the enemy. Perhaps they were the liberators. On Earth, the sun rose over the mountains of Korea. In the command center far below the surface, General Do-Han Lee received word that the Council's armada had begun its journey. 412,000 ships were heading towards Seoul. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. He turned to his staff with calm determination in his eyes. They are coming, he said. Let them. This time, we will finish it. The final battle was about to begin. The Grand Armada of the Galactic Council dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol System. 412,000 ships spread across the darkness of space, their weapons charged and ready. High Commander Torek stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Eternal Vengeance, watching the small, yellow sun in the distance. Today we end this, he announced to his fleet. Today we show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Council. His ships began to move forward in perfect formation. They had trained for months, studying every detail of the first battle. They knew about the gravity wells now. They knew about the human tactics. This time, they were prepared, or so they believed. Admiral Sahiyun watched the approaching fleet from the bridge of the Bizon Rising. The Seoul defense line was ready. 3,000 ships waited in hidden positions throughout the system. Just like before, but this time they were not alone. All units. Report status, Sahi commanded. From the darkness of deep space, 2 voices answered, outer colonies, combined forces. Ready, said Admiral Yumbi Cho. Her fleet of 1.5 million ships waited behind a nearby moon. Invisible to Council scanners. Deep Space Expeditionary Fleet. Ready, said Admiral Heinwebeek. Another 1.2 million ships were positioned above the orbital plane. Ready to cut off any retreat. Turek had brought 400,000 ships to this battle. Humanity had brought nearly 3 million. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. The Council fleet pushed toward the inner system, expecting to face the same small force that had defeated them before. They scanned for gravity wells and found them, then moved carefully around the traps. Torek allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had played their tricks once. They would not work again. Then the sky exploded with light. Human ships emerged from everywhere at once. They came from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from angles that seemed impossible. Railgun fire tore through the Council formation before anyone could react. But this time, the Council was ready to fight back. Their ships returned fire with plasma cannons and missile barrages. Shields flared and died. Metal burned in the vacuum of space. Rear Admiral Jinho Park led his squadron into the heart of the chaos. The Soul's Dream twisted through the battlefield, dodging fire, striking back, never stopping. His crew had been fighting together for years. They moved as one being, thinking the same thoughts, making the same decisions. Enemy dreadnought on the left, Yuna called out. It is targeting our carrier group. Ginho saw the massive ship turning its weapons toward the vulnerable human carriers. Those ships held thousands of fighter pilots and marines. If the dreadnought fired, hundreds of people would die. All squadrons, focus on that dreadnought, he ordered. Take out its weapons. 12 ships attacked at once. They swarmed around the giant vessel like insects attacking a bear. Railgun rounds punched holes in its armor. Missiles exploded against its shield generators. But the dreadnought was huge and heavily protected. It would take too long to destroy it this way. That was when Commander Nari Zheng made her move. Nari was a Marine commander with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 10 years training for exactly this situation. While the squadrons distracted the dreadnought, her small transport ship approached from below. Magnetic locks engaged, her pilot reported. We are attached to the hull, Nari checked her squad. 12 Marines in heavy armor, carrying plasma cutters and EMP grenades. They were about to board an enemy ship that held 3,000 Villani soldiers. Remember the training? She said calmly. Fast and quiet. We take the bridge, we take the ship. They cut through the hull and entered the dreadnought. The inside was dark and filled with smoke from the external attacks. Nari moved through the corridors like a ghost, her squad following in perfect formation. Villani soldiers appeared around a corner. Nari threw an EMP grenade before they could raise their weapons. The pulse fried their equipment and left them stumbling in the darkness. Her Marines took them down in seconds. They reached the bridge in 11 minutes. The door was thick metal, designed to withstand any attack. Nari placed a shaped charge on the lock and stepped back. The explosion filled the corridor with light and noise. When the smoke cleared, Nari walked onto the bridge with her weapon raised. The Villani captain turned to face her, his scales white with terror. This ship belongs to Earth now, Nari said simply. The capture of the dreadnought sent shockwaves through the Council fleet. Their commanders could not believe what had happened. How could 12 humans take a ship that held thousands? But while the battle raged in the Sol system, something else was happening far away. Captain Sun Wukang brought the silent hope out of warp near the Council station at Velos. His ship was completely invisible, hidden by technology that bent light and fooled every sensor. He had traveled across the galaxy without anyone knowing. We are in position, his navigator reported. No one has detected us. Sunwoo nodded. He had no weapons to fire, no soldiers to send. His mission was different. He carried something far more dangerous than any bomb. He carried the truth. His ship connected to the station's communication network and began broadcasting. The message went out to every corner of the galaxy, to every species that lived under Council rule. It showed documents that the Council had hidden for centuries. It showed secret meetings where leaders discussed how to keep their people poor and afraid. It showed orders to let plagues spread so that workers would be desperate. It showed plans to start wars between species so that no one would challenge Council power. The broadcast played for 6 hours before anyone could stop it. On the Sonari homeworld, workers watched the truth with growing rage. On the Torak colonies, miners put down their tools and refused to work. On 40 different worlds, governments that had been loyal for millennia declared their independence. The Council was falling apart back in the Sol system. The battle entered its 3rd day. The Council fleet was surrounded, outnumbered, and out of options. Their commander sent messages to the station at Velos, begging for reinforcements. No reinforcements came. High Commander Torek stood on his bridge and watched. His fleet die around him. Ships exploded in silence. Escape pods scattered like seeds in the wind. Everything he had built, everything he had believed in, was burning. Admiral Sahi Yoon appeared on his screen. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. "It is over, Commander," she said. "Order your ships to surrender." "Enough people have died today?" Torek looked at his officers. They were exhausted and defeated. Their scales had lost all color. They had no fight left in them. "All ships," he said, his voice breaking. "Stand down." The guns fell silent. The 3 days' reckoning was over. When the historians counted the losses, they found that the Council had lost 370,000 ships. Humanity had lost 4,000. It was not a battle. It was a lesson. The Great Chamber at Velos looked different now. The symbols of the old Council had been taken down. The 47 flags that once hung from the ceiling were gone. In their place, a simple banner showed a circle of stars surrounding an open hand. It was the symbol of the Assembly of Free Worlds. The new government that had risen from the ashes of the old, High Commander Torek stood in chains at the center of the chamber. His scales had turned gray, the color of shame among his people. Beside him stood the other leaders of the Villani Empire, the ones who had voted for war, who had believed they could crush humanity without consequence. The chamber was full. Representatives from 41 species sat in the galleries, watching in silence. These were the ones who had chosen freedom, who had turned against the Council when they learned the truth. The 6 species that remained loyal to the old ways were represented too. Though their voices were quiet now, among the crowd sat the heroes of the war. Admiral Sahi Yoon sat with her captains, her uniform decorated with new medals. Commander Nari Zheng sat with the Marines who had captured the dreadnought. Captain Sun Wukong, the man who had broadcast the truth, sat alone in a corner, avoiding attention as he always did. But all eyes were on the woman who walked to the center of the chamber. Ambassador Mingisio was not tall or imposing. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair, tied back in a simple style. She had spent her career building peace between nations on Earth, ending conflicts that had lasted for generations. Now, she spoke for all of humanity. "Hi, Commander Turek," she began, her voice clear and calm. "You stand before this assembly, accused of crimes against freedom, against truth, and against the people you claim to protect. How do you answer?" Torek raised his head slowly. There was no pride left in him, no arrogance. He looked like an old creature who had finally seen the truth about himself. "I did what I believed was right," he said. "I followed the traditions of my ancestors. I served the Council as I was taught to serve." Minji nodded. She did not seem angry or vengeful. If anything, she seemed sad. "You asked us once why we laughed when you declared war," she said. "You thought we were insane. You thought we did not understand the danger we faced." She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species she had never seen before. "We laughed because we recognized you. Every empire that has ever risen on Earth spoke the same words you did. They promised order through power. They promised peace through control. They told their people that freedom was dangerous, that obedience was safety. She stepped closer to Torek, looking up at the creature who towered over her. And every single one of them fell. Not because they lost in battle, but because they forgot a simple truth. You cannot conquer those who refuse to submit. You cannot rule those who would rather die than kneel. Torek's scales flickered with something that might have been understanding. We spent our entire history fighting ourselves, Minji continued. We killed millions of our own kind in wars that served no purpose. We built weapons that could destroy our planet 1,000 times over. We are not proud of this, but we learned from it. She turned to face the assembly, her voice growing stronger. We learned that true strength is not the power to destroy. It is the power to build, to heal, to lift others up instead of pushing them down. That is why your soldiers surrendered when they saw the truth about the Council. That is why your workers stopped building weapons. They did not need us to liberate them. They only needed to know that liberation was possible. She turned back to Torek. So I ask you, Commander, what will you do with this knowledge? What will your people do now that they are free? Torek was silent for a long moment. The question seemed to confuse him. No one had ever asked him what he wanted. He had always been told what to do, what to believe, how to serve. I do not know, he admitted finally. I have never been free. Minji smiled. It was a gentle smile, without cruelty or judgment. Then learn, she said simply. That is what freedom is. The chance to discover who you truly are without anyone telling you what you must be. She turned to the assembly and raised her voice. The Assembly of Free Worlds will not seek revenge. We will not destroy the Villani or the other species who followed the Council. That would make us no better than the tyrants we opposed. Some in the assembly murmured in surprise. They had expected punishment, executions, the destruction of worlds. That was how the old council would have handled things. Instead, Minji continued, we offer them the same thing we offer everyone. A place in our new community. Equal voices. Equal rights. The chance to build something better together. She looked at Torek one more time. You're free to go home, Commander. Rebuild your world. Teach your children a different way. And when you are ready to join the galaxy as partners instead of masters, we will welcome you. The chains fell from Torek's arms. He stood there for a moment, not knowing what to do. Then, slowly, awkwardly, he lowered his head in a gesture of respect that no Villani commander had ever shown to anyone. Thank you, he said quietly. We will try to be worthy of this mercy. He turned and walked out of the chamber, followed by the other former council leaders. The representatives watched them go in silence. Later that day, Admiral Yunbi Cho stood beside Minji on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships from dozens of species flew past, heading home to begin new lives. Do you think they will come back? Yunbi asked. Do you think someone will try again? Minji nodded slowly. Eventually, someone always does. Power is a drug, and there will always be those who crave it. In 100 years, maybe 200, another empire will rise. Another tyrant will look at the galaxy and dream of conquest. And when they do... Minji turned to face the Admiral. Her eyes were tired, but determined. Then we will be here. We will remind them why the galaxy learned to never wake a sleeping Earth. She looked back at the stars, thinking about all the generations to come, all the battles that might never need to be fought. But that is not our story to write. Our story ends here with the beginning of something new. A galaxy where everyone is free. A community built on trust instead of fear. She smiled one last time. That is the human legacy. Not the ships we built or the wars we won, but the idea that freedom is worth any price, that no one is born to serve, that every being in the universe deserves the chance to choose their own path. In the darkness of space, 1,000 different species looked up at the same stars. For the first time in 10,000 years, they looked up without fear. The old order was dead, and the future was waiting.